Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Thursday, April 15th Planning and Community Development Committee meeting for the Sunshine Coast Regional District. I'd like to call us to order here. It's 9:31 and acknowledge that the SCRD operates within the territory of the Seashelt and Squamish Nations. We do have an amended agenda in front of us today. We have one item of communications that was added to the agenda. Directors, do you have anything else that you would like to add or discuss or remove before we adopt the agenda today? I see no. Oh, Director Ties?
I believe there's an amended agenda, so we need to adopt it as amended. Is that right?
Yes, there is. There is one item of added communications. I was just looking to see if there were any further amendments from directors. But seeing no hands, can I have a motion to adopt the amended agenda, please? Moved, seconded, all those in favor? Thank you very much. We do have a delegation this morning, the Sunshine Coast Community Solar Association. And if IT can bring them in, looks like they're in. So welcome, Jerry.
Okay, great. That's the unmuting. I wonder why my video is muted.
We can't see you yet.
There you are. Okay, great. So thank you very much for letting me be here. I do have some sharing of screen. Get that going. Okay. Is my screen visible?
Yep, we can see it just fine.
Okay. Go back up to the top. Okay. So thank you very much for letting me appear today. I'll try to be as quick as possible because I know you've got tons to do. I'll just run through the earlier stuff because a lot of you are now getting familiar with us. So basically, we're an association that's registered nonprofit since 2015. And we basically are promoting solar. That was our initial thing, but really anything related to greenhouse gas reduction is in our wheelhouse. So energy conservation, switching over to heat pumps, whatever it does that will improve our situation here on Earth. We have 57 paid members, active members, and there are about 545 that listen to our newsletter every month. So there's a lot of people that are very interested in this subject on the Sunshine Coast. We have done a couple of major projects the last couple of years. In 2020, we put a set of arrays on the senior center. That was in memory of Dr. Polly, who was on our board of directors. And so far this year, it's saved over $1,000. So it'll be saving the inflation-proof $1,000 a year for the next 25 years that it's guaranteed for. And panels probably last 50 years if you don't need to change the roof before then. Okay, so that's that one. And we are in the middle of doing one for the Seashelt Animal Shelter, which is right next to your Field Road office building. And must say the Seashelt office is perfect for solar. You guys should have some too. But anyway, we had a fundraiser. Cody is on our board of directors. He's our youth member. He was elected in our 2020 AGM. And he and his mom are real go-getters, and they walked from Gibsons to Pell River during his March break a few weeks ago. And so far, I checked today, they've raised $23,500 specifically for the SPCA, and they've raised over $10,000 for another foundation that will be doing education on the Sunshine Coast, specifically earmarked for the Sunshine Coast. So awesome fundraiser. We're real proud of that. and that'll cut the hydro bill at the SPCA by more than 50%, so probably in the order of $1,500 a year. Again, they've got a metal roof, so that thing could sit on there for 50 years. Okay. In October, we presented a plan for the Gibsons, the rec center, and that we enjoyed doing the presentation for you, and I think there's lots of great ideas in there, and it went to the staff, and the staff came back after reading our report. It was a pretty detailed report, had a bunch of recommendations, and basically they said, well, it's really interesting, but there may be better opportunities in other places. So there are other buildings where instead of paying the large rate for electricity of 6 cents a kilowatt hour, you're paying 12 cents a kilowatt hour. So maybe solar would be better there. And maybe there are better opportunities at the Aquatic Center. So without knowing any of those, there's really no point proceeding with the Gibsons one because it may not be the best thing to do. So really, and I do agree with the staff report that says that we need to prioritize spending based on looking at all of our buildings first. We need an audit. And then once the audit's done, the next step, the next logical step is to look at the top opportunities and say, how much is that going to cost? What's our best guess of the cost? And sort of put together a little project plan. And then you would have the information that says, okay, starting, whatever year you're going to put it in the budget, or when some of these new green infrastructure grants start becoming available, or the restart grants or whatever, you'll have shovel-ready projects. The project will be already identified and costed, so you can apply for the grant and get straight into it. So, and a lot of these grants, you have to move fairly quickly. So having the list of things to do in the right order would be highly valuable. And then the next problem was we recognize the staff is already overloaded. We hear about people complaining about water and effluent and garbage and recycling. I can just imagine all the pressures on you guys. So they'd be really hard pressed to do an audit of all the buildings. I think there's over 40 buildings to look at. So some are small, some are big, but it's a big job. So our group is specialized at this. I have been in energy for the past 40 years, working out of the pulp mill. I'm now retired, trying to not be bored, and I'm part of I pay taxes to the SCRD, so I have a vested interest in seeing you guys be successful. And we have many other people in our group that are really good at this kind of thing, and we have talked to the SCRD staff, to our chief administrative officer, trying to figure out sort of how would we fit in something like this, and come up with a plan where basically we would volunteer to do the audit, find out from your staff exactly what information they want to gather and what format they need it, because you guys have actually several different systems for monitoring your assets. So we'd want to gather information in a way that it's useful to you and fits in with your systems. So we're willing to do that. And back in January, we were under a time crunch. We weren't sure if you were going to be interested. I still hope you are. But we made a grant request to the Pacific Institute for Climate Solutions, and they have accepted that. And basically, we have got money for a 3-month intern who would work full-time on this project with the volunteers so that we could put something together for you that would be very substantial and solid. So I think that's a really great way to do it. Basically, you'd be getting a consulting study from your volunteers. And you'd be ending up with a prioritized, shovel-ready set of project plans. So you're ready to go and apply for any infrastructure grants that come up, or when there's probably some really good ones, you probably just want to put them straight into your budget sometime in the next 3, 4, 5 years. Just and having the costs set up, you'll know what to expect and how to fit it into the budget. So our objectives are the Sunshine Coast Community Solar Association, I think, mesh really well with the SCRD objectives. We want to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. We want to reduce your long-term operating costs. We want to improve the efficiency of the energy that you use and hopefully move it towards electricity and away from natural gas. And also increase the building resiliency. So there are many of the buildings that are used that are crucial to the infrastructure of the coast, and having an independent electrical supply might be really useful for those buildings. So what I'm hoping to do from you here is get approval to take the next steps, basically start meeting with the SCRD management. And I know there are different silos, the rec group and the maintenance group and so on. They have different buildings under their purview. I'm not sure what the different systems are, but it would be good to meet with them and find out what exactly they need to have information that they would be willing to support to go forward. And then once we have that information, we would need access to things like the gas bill, the hydro bill, and physically look at the buildings to do the analysis. And if necessary, we'll sign non-disclosure agreements to keep anything private that needs to stay private, I'm sure you don't want to have a whole bunch of financial information out that isn't public. So I guess that's really it. What I'm asking for is your interest. I'm hoping you're interested in proceeding with this project. That's my 10 minutes.
All right. Thank you very much. If I can just get you to stop the screen share.
Yes, indeed. Go.
Might be able to stop it here.
Can you stop it there?
There we go.
Thank you.
Yeah. Directors, any questions, comments? Director Ties.
I think it's a great idea. I think, thank you very much for putting some effort into this initiative. And I think it's something that's worthwhile pursuing. I guess one question is does staff have the capacity to do the liaison? And that'd be a question for staff. And then a question for Jerry would be, wouldn't you also need to kind of have a look at the orientation and the shading of particular roof structures of all these buildings as well?
That's why we need the access to the buildings. We would do a shade analysis. We would also look at the wiring, the roof, what's it capable of supporting. So that would just be for the solar part. We'd also look at the building itself. Does it need new insulation, weather stripping, etc.? Does it have an old gas unit that could be switched over to a heat pump? there's a whole list of things that we could look at, that we'd like to look at. And it depends very much on what the managers want to look at. Some of this information you may already have already.
Thank you. And then on the staff side of things, who would like to take on the question of whether we've got the liaising capacity, what have you? GM Hall?
Thanks, Chair. From staff's point of view, we don't see that there's a capacity issue here. There's reasonable alignment with the work plan that's derived from the strategic plan here. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much. Director Seegers.
I think it's a great opportunity. I thank you for the work you're doing in support of the community. It's amazing. I also noticed that yesterday we're starting to see the first of the federal government grants being announced. This one's called Green and Inclusive Community Buildings Program. So we're starting to see funding become available to help with the financial aspects for government. So great timing.
All right. Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Jerry. Chair and Jerry, yeah, looks like a good project. I think it is a good project. I do have a question, Jerry, about the, this is kind of this expectation management about the shovel readiness of what you can get to as a shovel ready project opposed to, so I'm wondering about the difference between audit, recommendations, and shovel readiness, this sort of continuum of what you might be presenting.
Okay, so the audit is just sort of what is the state of affairs right now. So the opportunity is our expertise that say, oh, this one's perfect for solar, that one's got an old gas unit, you should be switching over to heat pump, that'll save money there, and greenhouse gases. This, we can even throw EVs into the mix. Which ones, which buildings will you be needing an EV charger at in the next few years as you move your trucks and cars and assorted fleet over to EV out of the carbon economy. So we're looking at the electrical system anyway. We could put that in. Once we've decided here's what's in the building and looked at the top opportunities, then it's a question of how much is it going to cost. So we can actually do a very good estimate for most of these things because we have a database. We've been doing this for the past 5 years. So we can put together a very good estimate, plus or minus 30% typically, maybe plus or minus 20 if you're getting actual quotes from people. And then you end up with, here is the project, here is the benefit, and here is the projected cost. From that point on, you can say, okay, we're going to do this project. You can apply for the infrastructure grant. That's all the information. If you've got a plus or minus 20 or 30% estimate, you're shovel ready. That you could just go to it. You say, this is what we're going to do. If you get the money, you go out for your 3 bids and you're done.
All right. Director Beamish.
Unmute myself here. Yeah, thank you, Jerry. I see your application for the grant, for the intern grant, mentions that you're extending the offer to Gibsons and Seychelles and the Seychelles Nation. I look forward to that discussion with Gibsons because I think this is something that certainly our town hall could use, and we have a few other buildings that might be appropriately aligned. And we are sitting here in full sunshine right now, so I've no doubt that we would benefit from this.
Okay, yeah, I offered it to the SCRD first. We will do that, and if we don't get it through this year, we will. That will be our next project. Excellent. So I plan to move through the whole Sunshine Coast, but you guys are the first. I offered it to Dean in January, and I think for 3 months that will be about all I can do. But these are co-op students. There'd be another co-op student available September, another one in January. So we'll get to it as quickly as we can.
Thank you.
I don't want to overoffer.
Thank you. Director Ties.
Yeah, I recall staff also being concerned about the timing of things, or the timing of installs as it relates to having to have the roof redone and things like that. So I guess that's another thing that needs to be added to the parameters, is even though a building might be the best suited for a solar array, if we need to redo the roof within the next 5 years, it might not actually be the right timing for it. So I think I'm looking forward to hopefully a nice thorough report that has all those parameters in mind.
Thank you. Director McMahon.
Yeah, I'm getting this picture of people on roofs with shovels, which is kind of curious. But no, this is great. I think the timing is also good because I expect we're going to be paying through the nose for Site C for a long time to come. So I don't think our electricity costs are going, or our energy costs in general, are going to go down. I would like to make a motion that staff work with the Solar Association to explore a partnership for facility energy studies.
Thank you. And I see a seconder for that. A couple seconders. Excellent. Any other questions, comments from directors? I haven't said anything yet, but I do think that this is a great opportunity. We do have a lot of buildings, and maybe some of them aren't going to be quite right, or it's just not worth the cost, but some of them might be a fantastic opportunity. And I look forward to someday seeing this work done at the District of Sechelt too, because, Town Hall has a massive south-facing slope that's probably just about the perfect angle to be just completely covered in solar panels, but it's never been on a work plan. So it would be interesting to see these things move forward. Director Seegers?
We just redid the roof, so perfect timing.
All right. I don't see any other hands, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much as well.
Thank you for being here. Is there any further questions or comments for our delegation before we let them go? All right.
I have one question. Who will I expect a call from and when?
That's a great question. I suspect it'll probably be our CAO, or Mr. Shea. I saw you unmute yourself.
Staff will check in internally, but we'll be following up shortly.
Okay, great. We're in the hiring process, so if you guys want to be part of choosing the intern, just let me know. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Director Hiltz, I see your hand up.
Yeah, Gary was mentioning the hiring is expected to be, and the start date of the intern is expected to be
mid-June,
approximately
mid-May rather.
May, June, July. May, June, July.
Well, it would be basically June, July, August.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy that sun that we don't get to enjoy.
Okay, will do. Bye-bye.
Bye now. Directors, can I have a motion to receive the delegation materials, please? Since I realize we did not do that. Moved, seconded, all those in favor? Thank you very much. Before we move on, can I have a motion to receive all reports and communications and minutes? Moved, seconded, all those in favor? Thank you very much. All right, moving into our reports. Annex B of our agenda package, Planning and Community Development Department 2021 Q1 report. I'll turn this over to staff, GM Hall.
Thank you, Chair. So at the end of every quarter, staff report on departmental activities. And here we have a report for Q1 for the services within the Planning and Community Development Department. And directors will note that the effects of the year-over-year effects for the first quarter due to COVID are pretty evident in this report. Staff are pleased to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Directors, Director McMahon.
Yeah, I'm going to start with my absolute favorite in the report, which is the roof of the Gibson's library, which is euphemistically called Seagull Mitigation. For those who don't know, the architectural roof of this library turns out to be ideal seagull habitat. And when I was the board chair, there were 23 nesting pairs on the roof. And it's been, the SCRD actually kind of forgot they owned the building for 18 years. So when staff had to come in and start doing maintenance, it was a challenge. You know, going up this ladder through the hatch with a hard hat and full protective gear to do humane battle with the seagulls has been interesting. So I was just wondering if staff had any details on the ongoing. I mean, the roof for seagulls, it's like the British properties of Gibson's. They weren't giving this up easily.
Thank you for that very visual descriptions. I guess GM Hall, do you want to touch on the seagull issue?
Thanks, Chair. So the efforts of staff to make the roof inhospitable have proven relatively effective. We've got at most a couple of fairly long-time residents, but no newcomers. And I mean, I know it's a funny activity to undertake, but the effect in terms of extending the life of the roof materials from reduced bird infestation is very real. And so the effort in this regard is paying off for the library building and for everybody who pays into the service. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Beamish.
Yes, I'm just looking for stats on the Gibson's pool. I noticed that the Seashell pool and the Pender pool there, I've looked through a couple of times. Were they left off, or we just did not have stats?
Gibson's and District Aquatic Facilities on page 20 on the bottom.
Okay, and as you're saying that, I arrived at that. So again, thank you. I missed it because it wasn't down with the pools there. Yeah, good. Thank you. Yeah, good.
Yep.
Yeah.
Directors, any other questions? Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. It's on page 7. It's the dramatic increase of email inquiries. I was just wondering if staff could say anything about their ability to get to all of these inquiries. And I think there's probably a scale between a simple inquiry and a more complicated. And nearly 400 in February, and you only got 20 working days. That's like 20 per day. It seems pretty daunting to be able to get to this. So is it a goal to answer all inquiries, or is there a triaging that goes on in terms of prioritizing, if you could say anything about that?
Great question. Mr. Patey.
Good morning, and thanks for the question. We are working on some strategies to differentiate between the inquiries that are within our RT inbox, between those that are related to actual development applications that we have in stream versus those that are general in nature. And we're at the moment having discussion about how we might tease those out into 2 different streams. But to answer the question, we make our best effort to answer every single one of the inquiries in the sequence in which we've received them.
All right. Thank you. Director McMahon.
Yeah, I always enjoy how our parks move around. I seem to remember last quarter that Soames Hill was in Area E, and now Kearton Road Trail is in Area D. But what the heck? I am concerned on page 16. I'm glad to see that park staff are monitoring the situation at Granthams Community Park. But monitoring an ongoing disaster is not actually resolving it. And I'm wondering what steps we can take to deal with this situation. I recently toured the culvert at the end of Curtin Road that runs into Chester Creek Ravine. It was installed around 1980 after a major landslide there damaged properties. And the culvert is still working quite well. There is a pipe that runs right from the end of the road all the way down the ravine and lets the water off right down by the creek. But a similar culvert at Whitaker Creek rusted out and broke, and we all know what happened there. So we have a lot of fairly urgent erosion challenges, and we don't seem to be making any progress in addressing them. So I'm wondering what some next steps might be, and what's the role for us, the board, in advocacy around this issue.
Great, thank you, Director McMahon. GM Hall.
Thank you, Chair. Well, culverts and stormwater drainage are typically and almost entirely the responsibility of the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. And the ministry has stated on a number of occasions that they're appreciative of issues being brought to their attention. They know there are many more eyes on the ground that can assist them than their routine inspections. So continuing that process of reporting things is the administrative answer. If there's a desire for additional information about effective advocacy or proceeding directly with advocacy for enhanced drainage management or inspection, then options would seem to be to contact the ministry, perhaps invite them to provide information on where they're at, and ask them to answer the question of how we can help them. But staff are speculating there. Thank you.
Fair enough. Thank you, GM Hall. And it might be something worth a deeper dive when we get to our strategic plan review in June. Director Seegers.
Thank you. Back to the email piece. I mean, I haven't sent emails to planning or any of the other departments in the SCRD. Do we actually make use of autoresponders in our email? So if they send in an email to planning, do they get an automatic response? And in that response, does it also indicate our estimated time, or a time frame in which we will get back to them? So, I mean, I think ours is the District of Seashell, it says 10 days. You will get a response within 10 days. So I'm just wondering if that's something that's in use.
Mr. Petey?
Thank you for the question, Chair. We do have an autoresponder in our email response, in our voicemail response, trying to direct traffic to our website, where we've developed better tools for people to self-serve. We, at the moment, I'm not sure if, I'd have to check. I'm not sure if we have an actual timed response. I checked our email inbox the other day and we had 286 emails in that inbox. So it's overwhelming. And based on those numbers and our current levels of staffing, we are a month to 6 weeks behind in responding. So I wouldn't want that message to go out to the community necessarily that we're a month to 6 weeks behind, but we're trying our best to do our triage and provide people an appropriate way to find the information that they can get through our auto responding messages.
But even if it's a month to 6 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
then they know. It's not like it has gone into this black hole that they're never going to get a response. We get responses to them. I mean, I'm dealing with a client in the District of Sea Shelter around this same matter. It's just they want to know, right? Because they've got other things that are hinging on when they're going to get a response. And if it's just we don't know, that doesn't give them any certainty to deal with their issues and stuff too.
Well, I think that probably also depends too on whether somebody's doing just a cursory check on something to do with a property, or whether they want to I want to build a garage and I'm ready to submit some building permits. You know, who do I talk to? What's the next step type thing, right? Versus somebody that just wonders what their zoning allows. And I suppose that's that triage part of things. Director McMahon?
Yeah, this isn't what I was asking about, but I had a danger tree removal issue. So I had to personally send an email to the SCRD about that. And I did get an auto response, and they did get to me. It was a fairly simple question, so that was great. The sports fields. Last year, I remember there was a joint sports field group that was on initiatives around, you know, the state of our sports fields across the coast. And I was just wondering if there's any update on what they're up to.
GM Hall?
Thanks, Chair. So staff are maintaining contact with that Better Sports Fields group, which we understand has now formalized into an official group, and continuing conversations about improvements and cooperation. Notably, we're in progress and well on our way to an equipment sharing agreement between local governments that will help with sharing scarce and expensive resources for deep maintenance that we previously were buying in from off coast at higher costs and lower frequency as a result. And we are continuing maintenance improvements that were discussed with that group last year in terms of our cultural practices and improving light that gets to the fields. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair. On page 5, we talk about updating 310, Bylaw 310. And I think I've asked the question before, but I forgot the answer. Is 337 going to be consolidated as part of that activity, or is that something that's further down the road?
GM Hall.
Thank you, Chair. So staff do not have, and there's no board directive to update 337, but from the inception of that project, the opportunities to flow improvements that we might develop for 310 over to our other zoning bylaw have been considered. And so that remains on staff's radar. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Patey, I saw you unmute yourself as well. Was there anything further you wanted to add?
Thank you for the question. No, I don't have anything further to add. Ian answered it beautifully.
All right, thank you. Director Lee, did you have a follow-up?
Yes. The reason I asked the question is that we updated the Pender Harbor and Egmont OCP quite some time ago. But Bylaw 337 has never been updated to reflect the changes in the OCP. I would have expected it to have been a concurrent activity. So perhaps I could get an update on that then?
Okay. Is that something you're willing to receive offline, Director Lee? Or I don't know if staff would necessarily be able to provide that update right now.
Sure, I can get it offline if that's necessary.
Okay. All right, Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the Granthams Waterfall topic. The community has done petitions. Moti at all levels seems to know about it, but I think we're in the break and fix mode, right? Lower road breaks, we fix it. Bypass breaks, we fix it. Russell Road, we break, we fix it. So that's there just doesn't seem to be any funds for the preemptive. So residents are watching and listening and hope it isn't a disaster when it actually gives way. So that's sort of the status of that file. Thanks.
Director McMahon.
Yeah, just following up on Director Hiltz. Preemptive is, you know, penny wise and pound foolish. It's a very bad long-term strategy, as we have reason to know at the regional district. So we do need to put pressure on the province to start doing this maintenance that has been neglected for a long time. This is not new technology, and indeed, looking at some of the existing infrastructure, I wonder why Modi thought that a whole hydrological study was necessary for Granthams, because it seems to me that they put something in on Kirton that worked without, major scientific research. So I hope we can find a way forward here.
Thank you. Director Beamish. You're muted, Director Beamish.
I'm thinking if there's a downstream risk to residents or to other SCRD infrastructure, the MIA will often come out and do a risk assessment of a project. And maybe with the benefit of a MIA risk assessment, having that presented to the province and saying, okay, we've looked at this, here's the risk. You are now aware of this. And we just want to ensure that you are aware of that, that this poses a significant threat to areas of our community, and put them on notice so that in a formal way. And if MIA doesn't do it, maybe get an engineer to do it and do the same thing. We did that years ago in Gibsons. You recall after that landslide in North Vancouver years ago that there was some kind of sense everybody knew it was going to happen. But it took a death before anybody responded. And so we did some risk assessment here of areas, and we made some changes as a result of that to those areas. So I think it's worthwhile putting the province on some kind of official notice, especially if there's risk to either infrastructure or residents downstream.
Thank you, Director Beamish. Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I was looking at page 23 and the admission visits to the Pender Harbour Aquatic Center, and I'd like to say that staff has done a great job here. When I compare 2020 to 2021, which is operating under severe restrictions, compared to 2020, where they actually weren't in yet. We closed it, I believe, in the middle of March. So it looks like the visits have stayed up in spite of the COVID restrictions. So congratulations to staff. That's well done. So thank you.
Thank you. Director McMahon.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on Director Beamish there. I'm wondering if we could request staff to look into whether an MIA risk assessment is a tool that we might use going forward. Maybe I could throw that one at our CAO. Can we ask for an MIA risk assessment? Should we? Is that a good tool that might get some leverage at higher government levels?
CEO McKinley.
I'd frankly have to look into it, Director.
Does this need a motion, or are we dropping hints?
Director McMahon, if you'd like to make a motion on it, I think it would certainly help things, at least to keep it on staff's radar, even if it comes back that we can't, or that it's not within our purview or whatever.
I'd like to move that staff investigate whether an MIA risk assessment is merited for the Granthams Waterfall.
Does that cover off
community park drainage?
My apologies, Director McMahon. I keep cutting you off.
Sorry. I shouldn't say Granthams Waterfall. I should say the Granthams community park drainage problem.
Does that sufficiently give staff direction? I see some nods and a thumbs up. Okay. Do I have a seconder for that? Seconded, Director Beamish. Director Hills.
It isn't just the parks. There is some water infrastructure at the base of this as well. So yeah, I think this is the whole thing. If you're watching disaster funds only come if it's a disaster, not if it's a slow moving disaster that you see coming, right? So I'm assuming that SCRD staff will look at all of the SCRD interests in the MIA. So that would be the assumption, and not just restricted to the parks asset, but the water infrastructure as well.
The downstream impacts.
Yes. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions or comments on the motion? I don't see any, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Directors, is there anything else for the department Q1 report? I don't see any hands. So thank you very much to our staff for putting this together. Always appreciate the information and the statistics and the data, especially when you can compare directly, quarter to quarter, pre-COVID quarter and a COVID quarter. So thank you for that. Moving on to Annex C, BC Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch Application 008360 for non-medical cannabis store, Infinity Chill Out Joint. Mr. Seo.
Thank you, Chair. So this non-medical cannabis retail store proposed by Infinity Chilled Out Joint is compliant with SCRD zoning bylaws and the Roberts Creek OCP. A public consultation process has been carried out according to LCRB requirements. Public input received expressed both support and opposition to the proposal. Reasons for support include business opportunities for the commercial core in the heart of the creek, convenient access for local residents, possible prevention of black market, and trust in the applicant as a responsible business owner. And reasons for opposition include the store's proximity to the school, preference for other retails, and concerns on odor and consumption of cannabis in public places. Analysis of this report indicates that the main issue, the proximity to the store, the proximity of the store to the Roberts Creek Elementary School is not a compelling reason for rejecting the store to be located in this location. And a prescribed distance between a school and a cannabis store is not suitable for the rural areas of the Sunshine Coast. Therefore, staff recommend that SCRD indicate no objection to the application to the LCRB. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Directors, questions or comments? Director Ties.
Yeah, thank you. I do want to note that both the APC and the OCP committee requested that the community be consulted on a larger basis. But once I looked into the efforts that staff went to consult with the community, including notifying all the stores and residents within 100 meters, as well as giving it to the APC and the OCPC, and then having a post on the website and various other measures, and I think a newspaper ad was in there too. I think that consultation was sufficient. I also think that since basically our only commercial area is the heart of Roberts Creek, and yes, it is closer to an elementary school, my concerns aren't that large in regards to that, because I'd rather have a cannabis store closer to an elementary school than a high school, because those students are unlikely to be mistaken for 19-year-olds. And so overall, I'm in support of it, but I'd love to hear some thoughts from the other directors.
And I do see a little bit of a speakers list here. So Director McMahon.
Yeah, I also don't see anything to be gained by further consultation, because I doubt that people who have strong opinions about this are going to change their minds. I just find this kind of fascinating. I did a lot of research into prohibition at one time. 100 years ago, in October 1920, there was a highly contentious referendum in BC about whether or not to continue prohibition. And I've read the full page ads in the newspaper that said that if liquor was allowed, boozeriums would spring up next to schools and corrupt our youth. And I will note that the Gumboot Cafe sells the Demon Rum within a near distance to the elementary school, and I haven't noticed that this has corrupted their tender morals. So I think that we can go ahead. This store is required to comply with provincial regulations, and it looks like they are prepared to do so in a responsible manner.
Thank you, Director McMahon. Boozerium. I think that's the word of the day, and I think I'm going to have to try and remember that one. Director Beamish.
Just for reference, the town of Gibson's limits 150 meters from the school. So that there are different prohibitions put out there, but that's the distance that our council decided on.
Thank you. Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Overall, I'm supportive of the application and the position of sending no objection. I guess I have kind of two questions. One is, does this, in terms of, this is the first time I believe that this has come before the SCRD, so this is a new process. And the recommendations will go, and this essentially, how I understand it, as I said in the report, that the local government must give a positive recommendation, which then in turn gives the province discretion whether to issue the license or not. It's essentially a veto, it seems like. So does the report go along with the recommendations? Like, will the LCRB receive the report as part of that? I'm particularly interested in the school board's angle on it. Like, will they be heard directly through the report, or would they in turn be able to write to the LCRB directly as an institution to express their views? Because, you know, SCRD is here, school board's over there. So so will the report be part of the recommendation that goes to the province, and is there an opportunity for other groups to write to the provincial government on the application?
Thank you, Director Hiltz. Mr. Sayo.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the report will be part of the recommendation that is provided to the LCRB, because they request a summary of public consultation as well. So that will be provided to LCRB. And regarding whether or not the other agency could communicate directly to LCRB, staff is not sure exactly if they have that opportunity, but it's my understanding that the LCRB is trying to gather the view of the public through the local government, not through individual agencies directly. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Director Ties.
Yeah, thank you for that discussion. Happy to move the recommendations on page 24 as stated.
All right, and I see a seconder for that. Okay, this is Rural Planning Services, so A, B, D, E, and F. I see no further hands up, so I will call the question. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to Annex D, frontage waiver application FRW 00008, Sunnyside Road. Mr. Sayo.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this frontage waiver is to facilitate a two-lot subdivision on Sunnyside Road. Each new parcel will need to have access to Sunnyside Road. The frontage of the parent parcel is already narrow, and in order to allow for large, contiguous, and usable area on each new parcel, a panhandle driveway for the new parcel in the back is proposed, and a frontage waiver is required. So neither the OCP nor the zoning bylaw has policies or regulation against panhandle lots of new subdivisions. if all other requirements are met. The Ministry of Transportation has no concern with the lot layout and has issued a preliminary layout approval for the proposed subdivision. And due to the small size of the subdivision and the technical nature of the frontage waiver, it was not referred to the APC. Staff considered the frontage waiver reasonable and recommend approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's interesting because I think we've had two, the last meeting and this meeting, each had a frontage waiver for a panhandle driveway. And I don't think we've had any before that I've been chairing this meeting. And yeah, I know it asked last meeting about the panhandle aspect and whether it was supported. So thank you for touching on that with the OCP in your comments there. Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is a curiosity question. I was looking at the existing health covenant and proposed health covenant, trying to figure out what they were. And if sounds to me like the proposed would be a new covenant as opposed to moving the existing one. So 2 questions. Do I have either one of those right?
Mr. Seagull. Oh, or GM Hall. Sorry, GM Hall. I saw you unmute yourself.
Yes, Director, you're right. There's a covenant required for a septic system through the lot proposed to be created.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Director McMahon.
Yeah, we have a lot of panhandle lots in Area E. It's the way the area was laid out. We don't have that many roads relative to the number of residential lots. So that's what happens. And I assume that people are subdividing in order to make housing somewhat more affordable. So I can't see any reason not to support staff's recommendations. So I'm happy to move the recommendations on page 32.
And I see a seconder for that. Thank you very much. This is again A, B, D, E, and F, Rural Planning Services. I don't see any other hands up, so I will call the question. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Is there anything out of the Egmont Pender Harbor APC minutes that needs attention? Director Hiltz?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I did have a question about the recommendation about the denial of the location. So I just kind of, what happens at this stage with this topic has been going around a few times, and it looks like they're sort of, the APC is stalemated with TELUS. So what happens now?
Good question. I think I'd ask that in agenda review. Who would like to touch on that? GM Hall?
Thank you, Chair. So, so staff are in receipt of this particular application from TELUS, as well as a number of others that we've been asked to review as part of TELUS's federal licensing or citing process. And so staff will consider the input from the APC as part of the advice that we will take into account as we prepare a staff report that the committee will see on a future agenda. And certainly the input of our volunteer APCs is appreciated. They have local knowledge and historical local knowledge that is of value, and we'll take it into account. Thanks.
Thank you, GM Hall. Okay, I don't see any other hands up, so we'll move into communications. We do have 3 items of communications. One was that late addition. My understanding is that Annex G is purely for information, so unless anybody has any questions about that, we're looking at Annex F and Annex H. Directors. Director McMahon.
Yeah, I'd like to talk to the Help Cities Lead initiative. Our fellow municipalities are asking us to send letters to critical BC ministers, urging them to develop more action on reducing our emissions from buildings. I realize that the details probably differ somewhat between municipalities and regional districts, but the point I think of the exercise is to try to get some more urgency towards climate change initiatives that seem to be on the back burner for all the levels of senior government. So I think we should support this initiative unless anybody feels strongly to the contrary.
Thank you, Director McMahon. I did have one question which I forgot to ask in agenda review when I had our corporate officer here. This is primarily, or this will affect the rural areas really only through the planning side of things. So my question is whether this would be rural voting only or if this would be voting all. I'm not really sure because I know how I feel about this letter. The District of Seashelt has seen this letter as well, and we chose not to provide a letter of support in this. But I just wanted to check because if it only applies to the rural areas, then it should be the rural areas that are voting on it. I don't know if CAO McKinley or
I'll do my best. I'll do my best corporate officer impression. I think as an advocacy matter that refers to provincial legislation, voting all is likely appropriate.
Thank you, GM Hall. Director Tice.
Yeah, that was going to be my comment, but GM Hall preempted me. But yeah, I think that the province does need to put more action behind climate change and give us some tools in order to be able to tackle it, as well as some funding. So I'm all in favor.
Thank you. Director Beamish.
The town of Gibsons did support this and has written a letter of support.
Thank you. Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Director Beamish. I see that they are the one on the coast that have already done it. Generally, I think it's a low cost, kind of high value advocacy piece. I don't see any direct cost to the regional district. The website has a growing list of supporters. I don't see any regional districts on that list yet, so I'm happy to put the regional district on that list. That's my point of view at this point. If maybe Director Seegers will be able to say what the Seashelt's point of view is on as it came across their council table. Thank you.
Director Seegers. You're muted.
Thank you. Sorry. There's two components to this. One is starting here and going forward. I think in the District of Seashelt, we're totally in support of that. I don't see any background in this letter or in the material that came on the cost to those in existing buildings and what that would cost to do that. And as you know, up and down the coast in Seashelt, we have buildings of various levels of compliance with something like this. And when we're looking at things like include the development of a new regulation that would set greenhouse gas emission targets from existing buildings. Are we talking about every residence in the District of Seashelt or on the Sunshine Coast? I don't know what that would cost. I don't know what the implications of that would be. I'm not willing to go there until we have more information. Going forward, totally okay. So parts of this, I think we as a council are in support of, but not all of it.
Yeah, and that's sort of my view too. They talk about the energy labeling of homes, things like that. Like energy labeling of homes is good the day the inspector's there to label the home. You know, things start to degrade. So is that a process that needs to be done annually? Like if you buy a 5-year-old home, that energy inspection label is likely to be more accurate than if you buy a 10 or 15-year-old home with that energy inspection label. So I don't have enough answers to this to feel comfortable supporting it, but Director McMahon.
I don't think we have the details yet, because any of these programs would have to be thrashed out very thoroughly before they could be instituted. So I am happy to go forward with it in a general sense. I understand the sort of the skepticism, because a lot of these programs are designed for urban areas, and they don't they're not very practical in rural areas. So if we wanted to include something in the letter that refers to the needs of rural and remote communities, that might be very appropriate. But at the moment, I would like to move that we write a letter of support.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that? I do see that seconded. Thank you. Director Lee.
This is all a little unclear to me. The step code itself is supposed to be doing this. And we've talked about the cost of increased cost to housing to implement that. And we've been suggesting that it be done over time. And now this would look like we're speeding it up and trying to do it for existing homes as well as going forward with the step code. We're struggling with a housing crisis already and cost affordability. I'm not sure that this is time to pile on top of what we already got on the go. So without having more information, including the economic impacts, it's pretty tough for me to support it.
Thank you, Director Lee. I know Director McMahon had her hand up first, but Director Pratt hasn't spoken yet this meeting, so I'm going to go to Director Pratt and then come back.
Thanks, Chair. I would echo what I've heard from Director Lee as well as Director Seegers. I think there's a little bit of a lack of clarity going for what they're expecting for past for builds that are already there. But also I do have a concern over the cost piece right now, and as Director Lee said, you know, we've got the step code, we've got the new building code, the new step code that's in effect. So I'm going to be against supporting this at this time. And you know, maybe something in the future, but not right now.
Thank you. Director McMahon.
Yeah, I don't think we're in any danger of getting any new regulations overnight, especially when you think about how long it is taking to bring the step code in. We have to start somewhere. We have to start looking at the emissions of existing buildings, because so far all the rules that are being brought in only apply to new builds. And the vast majority of our GHG emissions are from existing buildings. And there is at this point no way of really assessing that, no way of incentivizing the public to improve the efficiency of their buildings. There's no effective, subsidies, whatever. So I think we need to start looking at it.
Thank you, Director McMahon. I'm just going to chime in real quick before I go to Director Ties. You mentioned the subsidies, the retrofitting, things like that. I'm curious from a legislative or policy direction, and I don't know if GM Hall can answer this or if any of our staff are prepared to actually give an answer to this, but is there the ability to apply any sort of building regulations retroactively? My understanding is that, you're grandfathering in existing structures when regulations change. Is there any ability to retroactively apply any building legislation? GM Hall?
Thank you, Chair. That is a pretty huge question. I can only think of a handful of cases where local governments are in a position to retroactively enforce something. But when you think about energy efficiency standards for equipment being installed in buildings or something like that, senior levels of government may have different authorities from local governments.
Thank you. Director Ties.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we're not willing to universally endorse all of it. Can we say, well, we agree in principle, but these are some issues that we feel aren't addressed, so that at least we voice our support. But that, you know, staying silent, I don't think is the right way to go around with this. There's a bad need and an urgency, and yes, while you may not be able to retroactively put in regulations, you can certainly have things like heat pumps in existing buildings that will dramatically decrease the amount of GHG emissions along with it be required going forward. So I think, yeah, there are certainly things that might be a bit of a sticking point, but I think we should reply in some way or another, and even a partial endorsement, I think, is something that we should communicate.
Director Hiltz.
Thanks, sure. Yeah, well, it's as Director Ties is saying, the piece that really caught my attention was on page 37, which it's essentially, for me, it becomes the motion that it's an education and awareness campaign to focus collaboration between the province and government. So to me, that's the visionary piece. And if that was all, rather than the letter of support, if that was in there, I'd be supportive of that as well, just to state that we're on board with having more collaboration with the province and local governments to build climate policy. That seems fairly supportable.
Okay. We do have a motion on the floor to send a letter of support. So I'll call the question on that, and we'll see where it goes. Now, this is Director Seekers.
I guess it's, what does a letter of support say? Right. You know, personally, I'm not in favor of everything in here. I mean, one of the things that, I mean, for example, we're putting in the step code right now. What we're hearing from the builders on the Sunshine Coast is that's great, but we have to import people from somewhere else to actually do the studies and the tests that need to be done to meet that, because it doesn't exist here. So we don't know, even for 1 and 2, you know, mandatory home energy labeling. Do we have anybody here who could even do that? We haven't heard that. So I guess for me, in order to support this, I'd like to know, what would the letter of support indicate? Because I'm not in favor of everything that's in here, because I don't know the implications. So maybe a little more clarity in the letter would, you know, in the motion around the letter would help.
Okay. Director McMahon.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how we can move this forward. Perhaps we could bring this back after we've had some time to consider. I don't want to sit here and write a letter for 45 minutes. So, you know, perhaps we could go away and write something that we think is closer to what we want, and then bring it back to board next week.
It's certainly a possibility. I think it was highlighted there with the education and awareness campaign paragraph. Like I feel at this point that the SCRD could support increased collaboration between the province and local governments on building climate change policy, which may look at building initiatives and building retrofit initiatives. But that, you know, we may have reservations about supporting the entire document as suggested. I'll move that as an amendment if somebody wants to second me. Director Ties?
Well, it looks like out of those points that are being listed on page 37 and 38, the biggest sticking point would be number 4. Is that what I'm gathering? And maybe we can just say, hey, we'll write a letter of support for, supporting items 1, 2, 3, and 5, with more clarity being sought around item number 4. Just a thought.
Director Lee.
My earlier comment was around the fact that it's kind of vague what's being asked, and it depends on your interpretation. Like number 2, mandatory home energy labeling, is that retroactive? And if it is, we could be labeling existing homes as a problem, greatly reducing their value, and the homeowner has no choice. It's like I say, it's there's not a lot of clarity in the ask, which is kind of problematic for me.
Thank you, Director Lee. So then I guess the question is, if we're not ready to support it at this moment, do we want to just bring it back with a more comprehensive motion that touches on things? Director Seegers?
Make sure I'm unmuted. Okay. So I don't see the slide come up again. What about, Director McMahon was talking about bringing it forward to the board. So an amendment potentially to the motion on the floor that I think it's that the regional district support the letter, or the direction that the letter's going. Is that what the motion says currently?
Effectively, yeah. That we provide a letter of support for this initiative.
Okay. And that when this comes forward to the board for, approval, that the proposed letter be attached.
Okay. That sounds like a great amendment, and I will second that. Director McMahon?
Yeah, in my copious spare time, I'm willing to work on drafting something that might meet everybody's approval, and then we can hash it out in advance, so we're not sitting here spinning our wheels.
And I'm happy to participate on behalf of the District of Seashell. Okay, so I don't see any other hands up, so I will call the question on the amendment to the motion. All those in favor? Okay, we have an amended motion on the floor. I don't see any hands up. I thought,
Can we read that back again, the amended motion?
Sure. Recording Secretary, do you have sufficient wording?
Thank you, Chair. I have that the SCRD send a letter of support for the Help Cities Lead campaign, and that the proposed response letter be provided at the board meeting for review prior to being sent.
I think that captures it perfectly. Okay. Any other questions or conversation on the motion, the amended motion? All those in favor? All right, that's carried. Thank you very much. Anything else from that particular agenda item? No. Then let's move on to Annex H, which was our late addition from the Sunshine Coast Conservation Association regarding a request to extend the consultation period for the Flynn Row draft order to establish forestry visual quality objectives. And directors, who would like to speak to this? Or would anybody like to speak to this? Director McMahon.
Sure, I will. I've seen a fair amount of correspondence and concern on this issue. And I realize that we may not be in a position as a local government to participate fully in a consultation because our staff have a few other things to do. But our citizens are very concerned, and I think they need the opportunity to be heard. This is a major revision of forestry practice on the Sunshine Coast, and it needs a full public consultation, especially with tourism.
Thank you, Director McMahon. Director Beamish?
Yeah, I agree. And this is not on our agenda tonight, actually for next week. So I would like to suggest that if we do support this, I'd like to see the maybe a letter go out from the SCRD recognizing also the town of Gibson's and perhaps the Seashelt District of Seashelt as co-signers to that letter, because I think this is important. I don't think there has been sufficient awareness of this issue, and I think that past practice should be followed in this, where there's thorough consultation and discussion and given an opportunity to have input. I appreciate that this was brought forward.
Thank you, Director Beamish. The reason it's come up now is that the deadline is April 30th. So any recommendation we pass here still needs to work its way through board. Director Seegers?
Thank you. Do we know when this, I mean, I remember hearing about this through the community forest, because Director Toth and I both sit on there. So I know they've been aware of this and have responded to it. Because they have to implement whatever is coming forward. So I know it came out in mid-winter. So do we know what, I don't remember when I became aware of that. Do we know how long the community's been given already on this? Do we have any idea? I'm not aware of it at this point.
I also don't recall, but GM Hall, you've unmuted.
The staff understand that the deadline for comment is April 30th. And the typical comment period is 60 days. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Lee?
Thank you. Yes, the local community here has been aware of it for about a month. It's took them quite a while to get organized and start talking about it. It's a very complicated subject, and the local community have been trying to figure out exactly what it means, how to respond, what it is, and they definitely need more time. The community themselves need more time to figure out how to respond. I must say the government's been very helpful in explaining it, but it is, like I say, it's a very complicated subject. I'm all in favor of asking to at least extend the deadline to June. I know it's a hot topic around here, and they want to protect the views for the tourism, which is a main employer here, and especially when you consider driving up Jervis Inlet and heading up to Malibu and Egmont itself and looking up in the mountains. So they're trying to understand, but I'm confused as to why they don't ask local government to comment. It's I'm not sure we have the expertise, but in my opinion, we should be leading, not following. I do understand, though, it's probably back to the fact we can't do any land use planning on Crown land. But this actually, because of the visual quality, directly affects our businesses and our economy. So it's hard to imagine why we couldn't be considered as a stakeholder. I don't know if staff has any comments on that, if it's something we should even be striving for.
Thank you, Director Lee. GM Hall?
Thank you, Chair. Certainly staff understand the connection between visual quality objectives and quality of life in the community, and how that affects many different facets of where we live, work, and play. As an example of something that is of course very important, but does not directly affect our service areas, staff would, if this was referred to SCRD for comment, staff would struggle to identify a way in which we could respond on the basis of our services. This might be an example of an area where an advocacy approach, and even advocacy around process, which the Conservation Association notes in their letter, would be appropriate, or referral to some of our affected stakeholders like Sunshine Coast Tourism or even Scredo. And in making that comment, staff would note that the province has been abundantly clear that if we're not responding to provincial referrals with information about how our services are affected, that the comments are not, they're not able to use them, and that they do have a portal for comments for those whose interests are directly affected, and although we might feel it should be more broadly promoted and communicated, that portal does make it relatively easy for folks to submit comments. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I am in support of the extension. It does seem to be kind of this process change about getting the public to participate in the provincial referrals. And as GM Hall said, that this is a way for the regional district to suggest to the province that the community does not have the capacity in the current time limit, and that more time will allow them to give a more complete answer. So I'm supportive of it. And for me, it follows under this working together with the local community and the partnerships, as we just did with kind of the Solar Association. So for me, it kind of follows is to help these other groups deal with other levels of government. So it works for me.
Thank you. Director McMahon.
Yeah, I found the original ad. The original review and comment period was January 15th to March 16th, which indeed is 60 days. And the material is very complex. The map files are huge. And people were having a lot of trouble accessing the information through the portal, partly because of the file size. But I noticed that even the newspaper ad had helpful instructions like press the Alt key, which will bring up a menu at the top of the screen, and click on view, open FTP site in File Explorer, etc. So, you know, this is maybe not the easiest process.
Director Seegers.
It looks like they have different periods for different groups of people, because I've found the stuff through the community forest, and they were actually notified on December 23rd and had 60 days to reply. So they're probably segmenting their responses from different groups. So Director McMahon, you said that March 16th is what they're saying, and now this is saying April 30th. So there has been an extension of 45 days now. So, I mean, I'm not against extending the deadline. I mean, if people need more time, that's fine. It is more about the process. How are people finding out about it? It sounds like they're not. And maybe 60 days isn't sufficient.
The question is whether it was extended or whether they shifted the entire time block, because perhaps they weren't able to get the materials out in time. Director McMahon, did you have a follow-up to that?
Yeah, I did. The community didn't become aware of this until the middle of March, or the beginning of March. So everybody was scrambling, and it looks like there has been a short deadline extension, but they are still wrestling with trying to understand the issue thoroughly so they can provide good comments.
Thank you. Director Beamish.
I think the comment discussion we're having today might help to bring it to attention as well. But as well, I think that maybe be useful to invite the Ministry of Forest to make a presentation as a delegation to the regional board, so that we can see those maps and see the presentation from them and have some interaction with them. And it might encourage give greater attention to the issue, because this is a very important issue, and I think that we should request the extension and maybe request more information being made available to the community. If that's through a presentation to the board, that would be a good way to do it.
So a motion, perhaps something akin to that the SCRD request an extension of the visual quality index consultation period to June 30th, 2021, and further that the SCRD invite Flinro to provide a overview presentation at a future SCRD meeting regarding the visual quality objectives?
Prior to the June 30th, or as soon as possible, to enable community response prior to the June 30th deadline.
Okay. I'm willing to make that motion. Somebody willing to second me? All right, I have a seconder for that. Thank you. Director McMahon?
Yeah. Presentation, fine. I was going to make the point, though, that the impacts of logging will be felt for at least 50 years. So this is a significant policy piece with long-term impact.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands up. Directors, last call. Then I will call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Anything further? That brings us to the end of our agenda, unless there's anything further that anybody wants to touch on or what have you. We have no new business on the agenda. We have no in-camera session. So I will look for a motion to adjourn. Moved, seconded, all those in favor. Great, thank you very much. We have no attendees. Did we receive any questions by email? No questions received. Okay, then we will see you all later, 2 o'clock, right? Excellent. See you all at 2 o'clock.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.